Welcome to the Fertility Mind podcast. I am your host, Jessica Friesen, a certified fertility mindset coach, a sound healer, and an international best-selling author. My mission for this podcast is to give you weekly episodes where you hear my own success with IVF and how mindset and manifestation changed it all for me. You will also hear from my guests who share their success stories in the fertility world. I want you to know that you are not alone during this journey. Even when things feel tough and when things don't feel like they're going your way, with the tools and techniques that you will get from this podcast, I know it will change everything for you too. So thanks for being here with me today, and let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to episode 2. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Today I'm talking about my secondary journey with IVF. So this journey was a little bit different because I had started studying the universal laws. And so we're going to fast forward to 2019. So 2014, I was on my very first journey. I was smack dab in the middle of the fertility world. And my understanding of law of attraction, or the universal laws, is what I learned from The Secret and the Power by Rhonda Byrne. And the thing that I came to learn once I started studying the program called Thinking into Results is that law of attraction is only one of the universal laws, which I thought that was like all of manifestation, the law of attraction. It's only one of the universal laws. So in January, we had called our fertility clinic, January 2019. We called our fertility clinic and booked an appointment. My husband and I were excited. We were ready, but we only budgeted for one embryo transfer because we were so certain all it was going to take was one. So February 7th, we had our first consultation back with our fertility clinic. But back it up to February 1st, I called my mentor and told her I was going to, my first mentor, I told her I wanted to join Thinking into Results. So I had known her for 5 or 6 years prior through MLM, and she lived in my hometown. And I had seen her life really transforming the last couple of years. And she kept talking about this program. So I was like, I really want to understand manifestation on an even deeper level. And my husband was thinking about starting his own. He had started his own catering company, but he was only doing it part-time because he was working full-time and we had lots of kids in our house. So he was just like, this is just extra money on the side to help pay for things. But he kept talking about one day, like, what if he could go full-time and do something like this? So I was like, let's really understand manifestation on a fully deeper level so that we can start really living our life the way we want to. And the timing just seemed to be so beautiful because February 1st, I started the program. I started diving right into the universal laws, doing the lessons, listening to everything, and I felt so excited. And I knew that February 7th was our first consultation. So we went to our first consultation. I had 3 frozen embryos left from my egg retrieval from 2014. And with that, we had discussed the option of transferring 1 embryo or two embryos. And I'm going to tell you, there was something inside of me that I said to my husband. I get very emotional talking about this. I said, I want to bring all my babies home. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I grew these embryos with such love, these eggs, and then they were fertilized and now they're in a freezer. And I said, these are our babies. This is our DNA. And I said, I want to bring them all home. And the doctor looked at me, he's like, are you wanting to transfer 3 embryos? I said, oh, no. So he talked to us about 2 embryo transfer, doing, 2 embryos at once again. He talked again about the statistics of having twins and things like that. And my husband and I really talked it over. And we talked about our family dynamic. We talked about, if we were to have twins, how, could we manage? And I know absolutely we would have managed if we had another set of twins. But just with a lot of stuff that was going on, that was not a possibility. Financial wise, we thought, no, we could not have another set of twins, two babies, another set of everything else. And um, so ultimately, we decided to just do one transfer. But that was a deep feeling inside of, I just wanted to bring these babies home. I didn't want to leave them there any longer. And it was nothing against the clinic. The clinic was beautiful. Um, it was this feeling within inside of me. So we talked about doing the exact same medical protocol and everything that I did for the twins. So I had no doubt in my mind because number one, I was studying the universal laws. And number two, I was like, oh my gosh, we've only budgeted for one. So in my mind, I was like, we've set our plan. We're only doing one. We're going to do one embryo, studying the universal laws. We're doing the same medical protocol. Like this can't fail. So lo and behold, I got the phone call and they told me that I wasn't pregnant. And I remember feeling so devastated. And here's the thing. Here's the shitty voice that came in my head and said, don't put yourself through this again. You remember everything that you went through the first time. Yes, I got my twins, but don't do it to yourself. We don't have the money. We don't have, we had to ask my mom to watch the twins for us to go to our clinic that was, depending on traffic, could be 3 hours away. Without traffic, it was between 2 to 2.5 hours. So, and we had to leave at 5 a.m. So that meant that my mom would come over and watch the twins for us at 5 a.m. And we would have to rearrange schedules with the girl's mom because I couldn't put my mom watching 5 kids, like getting up, 3-year-old twins, or actually they were 4-year-old twins when we started the process. I was like, I can't get my mom to get them up and go to nursery school and get my 3 girls to 2 different schools. So I was like, we can't do that. So there was a lot, there was a lot going on, and I'm not here to share all that part. So I talked it over with Bobby, and we really delved into our finances. I really started talking about, how money is energy and how we can flow the money and how we can get it to show up for us and how we can do different things. And we talked about doing one more. We could do one more. My mom was on board to helping with the twins as much as she could. And I was so incredibly grateful that I had that option. So we were gearing up. I was doing affirmations. I was feeling so positive, but there was still this duality going on. I was going through a lot of emotions. There was the fear of what if this doesn't work, because I had 4 transfers. My 4th transfer is what took. And I didn't understand what was going on, why it wasn't going on. So I remember talking to our fertility doctor and saying, I don't know why I had recurrent failed transfers. There's nothing showing up in the blood work. There's nothing showing up on our ultrasounds. Why is this possible? And he even said, you know what, even with all the perfect scenarios, you can't guarantee a pregnancy. And he was very good at reassuring me that it wasn't me. And he said, you know what, your body has to figure it out, that you have to figure out the right medication. It doesn't always work on the first time. He said, more often than not, it doesn't work on the first time. And it was a good conversation, because I was feeling like, something has to be wrong with me. That was still a very big feeling, like something has to be wrong with me if they're not taking, if they're not sticking. And we did the same medical protocol that worked with the twins. So, why didn't the first transfer work in 2019? And he said he talked about embryo glue. He talked about the kitchen sink of medications, and he changed my medical protocol a little bit. I started doing estrogen patches and things like that. And I was excited. but I was still feeling really cautious, but I kept pushing through because I'm like, I'm studying the universal laws. I gotta keep going through. So at this point, I still didn't know all the universal laws, but I was really leaning into my faith that I know I'm supposed to have one more baby. And I remember talking to Danielle, my mentor, and I was like, what do I want to do? And she's like, write out your goal card, write out your affirmations every day. And she said, do you have the name for your baby? And I said, yeah, we want to have a little baby boy. We were stuck between two names. Um, and she just said, write out your name and just really, like, as you're writing your affirmations, feel excited. So I was feeling excited, but as soon as I was done writing my affirmations, this voice in the back of my head kept saying, why are you putting yourself through this? Like, don't be greedy. Like, there was a lot of expletives that went on in my head of why I shouldn't be doing this. I already have three stepdaughters. I have healthy twins. I shouldn't have to put my body through this again. Financially, if this doesn't work, like, we're done. And mentally, can I handle the fact that this is where we could potentially be done? And I was working through all of that. I was journaling about that. I was trying to figure out why these feelings, but I was persisting going through. So we geared up for our fourth, it's not our fourth, sorry, our second transfer. So this meant we only had one left in the freezer. And I said to my husband, I'm like, I'm really excited. I'm really excited. And I said, but there's something that's making me feel really nervous. And he's like, why? I'm like, I don't know. It just feels different. So we went through our embryo transfer and we had seen that our embryo was hatching. And I thought, okay, last time I'd seen our embryos hatching, we were pregnant with the twins. So I was like, we're going to be pregnant. And then there was this level of calmness over me. I was like, okay, we're doing it. We're doing it. And something seemed different about my blood work, but I kept reminding myself, this is different. We only transferred one embryo versus two, and it's 5 years later. Like, things will change in the fertility world. So I had to do 4 beta tests. And again, the numbers range very, very, very differently. So I remember they tell you that from at 5, technically, your beta level at 5, you're pregnant, but it's very low chances that you're going to, make it through. But because I was part of the fertility world and part of, like, watching a lot of fertility accounts and things like that on social media, people had talked about I had a really low beta, and, my son or my daughter is here today. So I was trying not to look at the numbers. And, we had a lower number. It was close to 100. So I felt like that had to be a good number. And then they said, come back in 3 days, 2 days, and we'll see if it's doubled. So I went back in 2 days. It had doubled. So I was like, okay, this is a good thing. But they asked me to come back for a third time. And I thought, why? So they said, come back in 5 days. We're going to just make sure that the numbers are still going really well. And I thought this seemed odd to me. So again, the numbers were doing what they were supposed to do. And then they said, come back for like in another 5 days and we're going to do more blood work. And I thought to myself, okay. And, that day, so they told me that my number, I think it was like 967, which was good for that point. And I left in such a great mood. And at this point where I was along in my cycle, I was really, really, really excited. I was like just so super thankful. And then they called and said, like, let's book you in for an ultrasound so you can, we just want to see that there's a sac, it's growing, everything like that. And lo and behold, at 6 weeks and 4 days, I started getting intense cramping that I'd never felt before. And I started getting this like clamping down, like almost like you were pushing in labor feeling. And I ran to the bathroom, and I was at this point, I was working, I was covering the office part-time. I was working from home, but they had asked me to cover the office for that day because they were out. So I was in the office. I quickly put the like back in 5 minutes sign, locked the door, ran to the bathroom, and I peed. And it just, I couldn't explain it. Like I wiped because I thought, like, is there blood? Like, what is this? And I continued to cramp, and I continued to cramp, and I continued to cramp. So I called my fertility clinic, and they said, okay. So this was on a Friday. They said, come in Monday morning, first thing Monday morning, because they were closing early, and they were closed for the weekend for some odd reason. So I went in on Monday morning, and they called me, and they said, are you at home? I said, yeah. And they said, your numbers have dropped significantly. You are having a miscarriage. And I remember just sinking to the ground, crying. And I was like, what the F? Like, really? Like, I'm studying the universal laws. I got to be pregnant. I got to see, like a positive on a pregnancy stick, because this is the one that I tested for before, because when I saw the embryo hatching, I was like, we're pregnant. I know we're pregnant. So before I did my beta, I did a pregnancy test at home, because there's honestly something magical about seeing a positive on a pregnancy test, at least for me. And I remember calling my mom, and I called Bobby, and I called my boss, and I said, I'm going to take a couple days off work, from just working from home. I said, I need some time. I need some space. And he's like, absolutely. And I was shattered. I was really shattered. So here's the hard part, guys. And I think it's important to share these things. So I had to go back in 5 more days to see that my HCG level was now officially like dropping to the point that I was going to get my period. So my numbers were 200 and something. So before, when I had last time my blood work, it was 967, and then it had dropped to 200 and something. I can't remember the exact number. I do have it written down. And then, so they said, come back in, in 5 days, and let's check. So 5 days later went by. I went in to check, and it was still sitting at about 100. And this is when I started to feel really devastated, because this is the first time I had been back to the clinic, and I was doing blood work to show that I was miscarrying, versus I'm doing blood work to get prepped for an embryo transfer or finding out that you're pregnant. And I sat in the waiting room of our fertility clinic, our satellite clinic that was doing my blood monitoring for me, so I didn't have to drive 2 to 3 hours away. And as I was sitting in the clinic, I'd seen 5 women sitting there with such big smiles on their faces. And one looked over at me, and she's like, you're glowing. I said, oh, thanks. And I really tried to hold it together, because I thought, I'm sitting here waiting for blood work for them to confirm that my HCG level is still dropping, and that, my period's going to be coming soon, and that I'm going to pass this baby. And I was just feeling so alone and so sad and so angry. I was angry because I thought, why would the universe do this to me? And I'm being just fully transparent with my thoughts. I thought, I'm paying out of pocket for fertility treatments. I'm studying the universal laws. I believe in the power of your mind. I believe in positivity. I believe in gratitude. I was applying all the things that I thought that I knew at that point. And I thought, why would I have to go through this? And I just kept telling myself, this is cruel. This is just really cruel. And I went in, I got my blood work done, and it was sitting at about 100. And they said, you need to come back in 5 days. I thought, okay. This went on for 4 times. I had to have 4 separate blood draws, and it was still remaining at 100. So they sent me to my fertility clinic 3 hours away, and I was supposed to have a consultation with my doctor because I was not passing this baby naturally. So at this point, we were over a month of me not being pregnant, but still, if I peed on a pregnancy test, it would have showed that I was pregnant because my HCG level was still high enough. So we went in, they did an ultrasound, and they said, it's still there. It's not growing. Obviously your HCG is not going up. It had actually gone up 2 points. So I think, the first number was 157, and then it went down to 155. It went back up to 157, then 159, and then it dropped down to 100 by the fourth draw, but it was still at 100. And so they talked about this methotrexate shot, which is a form of chemotherapy. I needed to have one in each bum cheek. And I could not do anything for 3 months. And I thought, what do you mean for 3 months? They said it kills all of the cells, anything inside your body. It's not, you can't do anything for 3 months. You need your body to get through all of this. And I remember feeling so devastated that not only had I just miscarried my baby of 6 weeks and 4 days, I now have to have some type of form of chemotherapy shots. I've already had multiple blood draws that has gone on for well over a month of me just going into clinic, just sitting there, trying not to cry, not looking around, not making any eye contact with anyone else. And my poor fertility nurse, she had, like, every time she saw me, she's like, my heart sinks when I see you. I'm like, I know. And I tried so hard not to cry every time I walked into that office. So they administered the methotrexate shot. They told me, I could be really, really ill. Some people vomit for up to 24 hours. Some people have no side effects. They told me all the things. And I just remember driving home and I said to my husband, I'm like, I hate the effing universe. This is cruel. This is so effing cruel. And he looked at me and he said, Jay, he's like, I know. And he's like, this is not what we expected. This is not what we wanted. And I need you guys to understand, my husband is like a freaking amazing man. He's so good at comforting. And he was crying too. And he's like, we got this. Don't worry. He's like, we got this. We're stronger than ever. He's like, we've got Dane and Aria. And I said, we have one embryo left. And he said, okay. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, well, we now have at least 3 months to save for another embryo transfer. And before I had left, I just asked them, I said, so 3 months, when approximately would be the next transfer? And she said, depending on when your period, it would be sometime in September. And that was a sign of hope for me because September is my birthday month. It's our anniversary month. And I've always loved September because it's always been a season of change. Kids go back to school, or, like the fall leaves are just starting to change to beautiful, like yellow and red and green and orange and just beautiful colors. So I thought, okay, but I thought I'll hold on to that in case we wanted to try. But at this point, I was cursing the universe. I was cursing the universe that my miscarriage took so long, and then I had to have a methotrexate shot, and then I had to go through all these things. And I actually stopped studying for a month. I didn't want to have any part of it. I thought, no, this manifestation shit does not work. F this. And I was in a real state. I was in a slumber, but I had to pick myself up, get myself out of bed every single day because I had my 3 stepdaughters and I had my twins. I couldn't just stay in bed all day and cry. I could not feel sorry for myself. I just had to power through it. But mentally on the inside, I felt like I was dead. I was only living for my kids and I felt exhausted. I felt drained. Anytime I had seen a pregnant woman, I cried. And I felt awful because I knew how much I had to be grateful for. And I kept reminding myself, you have so much to be grateful for. But I thought, I'm not feeling grateful. I'm not feeling grateful that I've spent money studying the universal laws and this didn't work for me. And then I remember someone posting in the community, um, actually, one of my accountability partners, she reached out to me. She's like, come back and just do the reading in the morning when you're ready, but just come back and do the reading. And I thought, okay, I can muster this up. I can do reading, but I'm not going to study. And I started doing the reading and something started sparking inside of me again. And I talked to my husband and I said, okay, what do you want to do? And he said, I'm going to leave this up to you because this is your body. This is, he's like, I want you to, do what you feel is right. And I was like, this is a decision between both of us. And he's like, I know. And he said, but you're the one that's studying the universal laws. It's your gut feeling. So I don't know if I've mentioned, but when we were in our first consultation, I knew I had 3 embryos and I had said to Bobby, I said, I want to bring all 3 of them home. I don't want to leave them frozen. And our doctor had said to us, like, are you thinking about transferring 3 embryos? I thought, oh, no, 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 no. But something inside me was like, I just want to bring them home. I was in so much love when I was growing those eggs. And when they were retrieved and fertilized, I was like, I want to bring these babies home. And so that was just my thought. And then as I was doing my reading, um, I believe we were reading The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard. And I started studying again. I started doing my affirmations, but the difference this time was I started to have a very strong feeling attached. And I was excited and I was like, I'm going to transform every part of my life. I'm going to transform all of my relationships and have beautiful, meaning, amazing relationships and, start really manifesting money. So at this point, my husband and I were both, um, we had left um, I had left my one job. So I had 2 part-time jobs at this point. So I had left my one job and my husband had left his full-time job to go full-time into his catering business. So I was like, we are going to manifest money. I was teaching my husband all of the universal laws so he could apply it to his business. And he was receiving a lot of success. And it was really, it was really amazing because what I taught him, he applied and he applied it in his own way, in his own form, and how he needed to and how he wanted to for his business. But I was just so excited that I could teach him what I was learning and he was free reign to run it however he wanted to run it. I was just talking about what I learned and we would watch lessons and stuff like that together. And we saw our relationship really starting to transform because we were really connecting on a different level. We were allowing spirituality and things to come into us by listening to our teachings and things like that. And I was like, this is amazing. And watching my husband have success, I was like, okay, manifesting is working. It's working for him, so it's going to work for me again. So we geared up to do our transfer. And I remember saying to my husband as we were going to start cycle monitoring again and to have our consultation now that it had been 3 months since our methotrexate shot, I said to my husband, I said, here's the thing. I'm like, do you remember at the beginning when I said to you, I wanted to bring all of our embryos home? And he said, yeah. I said, I'm bringing all of our embryos home. I said, no, I didn't. I physically got to carry them. Then I said, I'm going to carry our last embryo and this is going to be our baby. And he looked at me, he's like, God, Jay, I love your power. And I was like, thanks. So fast forward, we are getting ready for our embryo transfer, our last frozen embryo, because after this, we were done. We were absolutely done. We had no embryos left, so it had to work, right? And the beautiful song by Michael Bublé, Home, came on. Sorry, excuse the tears. And I said to Bobby, I looked at him, I said, listen to the song. I said, I'm bringing this baby boy home. Because while I was doing my affirmations and everything, I knew I wanted to have a boy. I would have absolutely been okay if it was a girl, but just something inside of me said, I know I'm going to have another little boy. And we were writing out his name. And the thing that I didn't mention, my husband and I, our little girls, my three older girls, had a rule that when we were trying for Dane and Aria, my twins, we had to have 4-digit names because my older girls have 4-digit names. So we found 4-digit names that we liked. And they all had to have a repeating letter. So I made a deal with my older girls. I'm like, Aria has a repeating letter, her A, but I said for a boy, I'm like, as long as I stay within the 4 digits, I don't have to have a repeating letter for a boy. And they said, okay, fine. So we had the boy's name Noel. We really liked it, but something I had started doing my affirmations like I'm so glad and I'm so happy and grateful now that Noel is here and doing all these things. So all of a sudden one day, my husband, he loves trees, so do I. And I lived in Ireland in 2008, and it was a place that completely changed my life. And I'd always wanted an Irish name, but my husband was like, no. And I was like, okay. Like a real traditional like Irish name. Like Siobhan or like just like Podrick instead of Patrick, Podrick. Like different, I just wanted like a really pretty, strong male Irish name. And we had went to go see a play, The Neverending Story, which is one of my all-time favorite movies as a kid. I feel like I watched that movie like 100 times, if not more. And when they were talking about, they picked up the book, The Neverending Story, and the emblem on the front of it's called Orin. And he picked it up, he put the necklace on so he could transport into the book in the movie. And I heard the name Orin, and I said to my husband, I said, this is our son's name. And he said, yes. And we came home, we looked up the meaning, and it meant strong trees. And it was an Irish name. It was all these different things. I was like, this is it. This is our son's name, Orin. And it fit within the 4 digits. So I was so excited. And, we heard the song coming home. And I said, this is Orin, this is Orin, this is Orin. And everything seemed to be lining up. So this was in September. Our beta was going to be like we were going to find out that on the day that we were celebrating my parents' 40th anniversary. So mine and my husband's and my parents' anniversary is on the same day, September 29th. But on the 28th, we were doing a big party for my parents for their 40th. So that morning, I was so excited. I'm like, everything's lining up. It's my parents' 40th anniversary. It's our last embryo. We heard this song. Like, I didn't test at home because I was like, there's no point. I know I'm pregnant. I know I'm pregnant. And I had started studying the universal laws again. I started studying me. I started studying thinking patterns, all of that. And an hour before we had to leave to go to the party, my husband was providing all the food. So he was cooking, and I said that I would serve. Like I'd pass around all the hors d'oeuvres and do that. And my whole entire family was going to be there. So September 29th, 2019, I got a phone call and they said, Jess, are you sitting down? And I thought, fuck, excuse my language, but I was like, no, you know. And they said, you're not pregnant. And I went, okay. And I just said, why? Why? And they said, I don't know. I don't know. And they asked, they said, did you do genetic testing when you did your embryo, your egg retrieval in 2014? And I said, no. And they said, we never know the egg quality. We didn't know the sperm quality. It could easily be just that the embryo wasn't strong enough to, develop into a baby. And the nurse was lovely. But I was just like, I'm sorry, I have to go. And I just screamed so hard into my pillow. I walked upstairs and I said, Bobby, we're not pregnant. And he's like, no, 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 no. And I said, we got to pull ourselves together because it's my parents' anniversary. I said, we'll cry tonight together. And my 3 girls were home as well. So I had 5 kids in my house that I had to pull myself together for, and I had my parents' 40th anniversary. So that was a really um, tough, tough, tough part for me. It was tough. And I remember cursing the universe. And I remember just thinking, no, no, I guess I'm done. And I was mad. I was mad for a while. And they told me to book a consultation with my doctor to talk about next steps and just review everything that kind of happened. And, if I needed to see a counselor or something like that, they would write me a note. They would refer me to someone I could talk to. And I remember just in this state of, I'm not going to call. I'm not going to call. I persisted in doing my morning readings and doing a little bit of studying. And I remember just feeling so devastated, and I felt lost. I felt broken. And I kept saying to myself, what the hell is wrong with your body? And universe, why would you do this to me? Why would you do this to me? And then we started reading The Power of Awareness. And I was told to read the persistent chapter so persistence, I believe, was in Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And The Power of Awareness is by Neville Goddard. So we were reading those books, and something about persistence in that chapter was speaking to me about persist. Don't give up. This is your environment saying something to you, but you cannot give up. And I could tell you the story that they tell you in the chapter about a woman who was trying to get on Broadway and how she didn't give up after so many times, blah, blah, blah. So I thought, okay, something's telling me I can't stop. And I decided I'll call the doctor, we'll have a consultation, and we'll talk. I was really starting to understand, listen to your voice. And I was understanding to let go of my time frame. That there was lots of synchronicities that started happening for me of let go of your time frame, persist even though it's hard, and it's working out for you. It's always working out for you. And then I started reading a chapter on faith and leaning into actually, you know, believing in the universe and believing that everything is always working out for you, even when it doesn't feel like that. Because if there's infinite possibilities out there and I'm only stuck in this like current environment, only seeing what's here, I'm not open to all the possibilities out there. So all of these messages started coming through to me. And I started listening. I started really listening. And I started really doing the work. And I thought, okay, I'm going to persist and I'm going to develop my faith. And the truth is, so I want you, as my listeners, to understand manifestation does absolutely 100% work. It's what you believe, it's what you hold, and it's how you deal with it. And so something inside of me just kept saying, go, 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 go. And I started listening, I started persisting. And then the book, Super Attractor, was brought into my attention by like more than 5 people had mentioned to me, I need to read Super Attractor by Gabby Bernstein. And that book spoke to me in so many different ways. It gave me such inspiration. And I was like, okay, I have to listen to this. Like there is something going on here. And, I started really realizing I was talking the talk, but I was not walking the walk of any of this stuff that I had learned in, the universal laws and in the program, thinking into results. I was not thinking it into results. I was not holding an image in my mind and trusting. I was trying to control everything 100%. I was not allowing myself to have connection with the universe or spirit or God or creator, whatever you resonate with, to allow these ideas. But it kept still speaking to me through, things that I was reading in books and through my community and things like that. So I remember saying to my husband, we're just, I'm okay now. And he's like, are you really okay? I'm like, I am okay. I said, I can't tell you. I said, it feels like with the twins, something is telling me that we need to be in this office right now. And he's like, okay, I'm trusting you. I was like, I love you because you trust me this much. And he's like, Jake, he's like, I want to have one more baby with you. And he's like, I want to give you the world. I'm like, my God, how did I get so lucky to have you? And we drove down. We were just watching like TV shows, like we were streaming them on our phone and hearing them through the speakers. And we were just watching like feel good TV shows. And we went down, and on the way down, like my husband and I again talked about, money's we don't have this in our financial budget to do anything else. Like we don't. And I just said, let's just hear what the doctor said. So again, here we are sitting in the doctor's office, and he looked at me and he's like, I don't know what happened. He said, because I don't know the egg quality. I don't know the sperm quality. This was all brought from your previous clinic, and all the testing and stuff was done there. And we didn't do genetic testing. So therefore, he's like, I can't tell you the answers. They're going to be inconclusive because I don't have all the facts. So, I said, like, if we were to move forward, and he said, did you ever do funded cycles? And I said, no. I said, in 2014, there was no funding. And I said, so we've paid for our whole entire fertility journey ourselves. And he said, you qualify for funding. And I said, pardon? And he said, you qualify for funding. And I just said, and he said, so your egg retrieval and your sperm retrieval will be covered. And he said, your embryo transfers will be covered. You just have to pay for your medication. And he said, and I will also give you a discount because you are a recurrent customer and, you've been through the process quite a few times. And my husband and I thanked him, and we cried the whole way home. And I said, this is our sign. And I said, I'm going to give you all the tools about money because money's energy, and we're going to manifest this money. And lo and behold, Big Bob, my father-in-law, he said, you know what, I can lend you a little bit more money for, the genetic testing. And again, I understand that, not everyone has a Big Bob, but this is how money works. It shows up in infinite ways, and it can show up through family members offering to help you, and don't turn it away. So at first I was like, no, we can't do this. And then Bobby looked at me. He's like, Jay, let's do this. If we're going to do this, like, let's accept the help. And I was like, okay. So again, like, I am indebted to my father-in-law and to my mom because my mom watched the twins for a lot of our appointments. And, my father-in-law loaned us the money to have our babies. So we did genetic testing, and we came up with the money. Like, it literally seemed like every time we had to go down to pay for medication, my husband had just got a deposit in his business that paid for enough for our medication as well as for him to do the event and to pay his other employee that was working with us at the time. And this is what I mean. So guys, I want you to understand this is now where all the synchronicities, because I made a decision, a committed decision, and I listened. So I surrendered. This is the big thing. I surrendered and said, tell me what I'm to do, and I will do this. And the first thing was our consultation, then finding out we were going to get a discount, then finding out that, our father-in-law was going to lend us the money for the genetic testing. But here we are, smack dab in the middle of winter. So, and because my husband's a caterer, where everything was lining up, so we did all of our blood work and everything in November. We were set to have our egg retrieval in December. So here's the kicker. My whole environment, the estimated day that I was supposed to have my second egg retrieval was a day that my husband was scheduled to have an event. And my husband had to have a sperm retrieval, a PISA. And I was talking to my fertility doctor, or fertility nurse, I should say, because I had a specialized fertility nurse just for me. She had other patients as well, but I only needed to contact her because things were lining up. And she would email me. And I remember her calling me and she's like, you know what? I think we need to cancel this cycle. She's like, number one, you're the last person that gets funding this year before the new funding comes in January. And he said, you know what? Sometimes it doesn't even come in until April, depending on how fast things move through the government system. So she said, you've started the process, you've qualified for funding. She's like, but now we need to get a urologist. And she's like, you have no time. She's like, I think it's important. I got to tell you, we're going to cancel the cycle. And I was like, no, we're not canceling the cycle. I was like, tell us who we need to call. And she's like, I've emailed the 4 top urologists here in our city. And she's like, I'm telling you, just be prepared. I'm going to call you in the next 4 days and tell you that we're canceling the cycle. That afternoon, I was working out a lot of ideas. My idea for my podcast, The Fertility Mind, came to me. And I was like, I pressed pause on my workout. I called my husband and I was like, I know the name of my podcast. I know I'm going to help people. I know what I'm doing. And he's like, where are these ideas coming from? I'm like, I am in tune with the universe right now. It's aligning for me. And he's like, okay. He's like, how are you going to help people? I told him all about my dreams for the podcast. I told him about how I want to help women, provide hope, all the things I didn't have. And he's like, Jay, this is amazing. I hung up with him, my phone rang, and it was a fertility doctor, a urologist, who said, yeah, I have privileges at your clinic. He said, come down December 2nd. We'll have it done. And I thought, oh my God. And it happened to be my husband didn't have any events for 4 days. So he had a little bit of time to heal. And we were still prepped and ready to go to, everything was going to be done. And then the other thing that came up is they said, okay, so he can only do it on the 3rd or the 2nd or the 3rd of December. You're not scheduled for your egg retrieval until December 15th. So again, you're going to cancel the cycle. And as I was talking to my fertility nurse, I was like, what about freezing your sperm? And she's like, I never even thought of that. She's like, I'll talk to your doctor. And she's like, I'll call you back. I had not known about like freezing sperm, thought about any of those things. It was literally something that just popped into my mind. And I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And she called back and she's like, yeah, your doctor agrees. We can freeze the sperm. So we went down on December 2nd, had the sperm retrieval, stayed overnight, came back, the next morning. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So then they told me like my eggs were maturing. December 15th is the date. My husband had an event that day. And I was like, he's like, so Jay, what do we do now? And I was like, I will call a friend, see if they can drive me down because it's a conscious sedation, meaning like I could not drive after. So I said, I'll call a friend because I knew my mom couldn't take me down. She had to watch the twins. And I lined it up with one of my friends. She said, yeah, I'll make it work. I'll take you down. And I was like, oh my God, like this is amazing. And my husband came home. I can't remember if it was that day or if it was the next day. And he said, guess what, Jay? I was like, what? And he's like, my event had to push their date until into January. He's like, I'm free on the 15th. And I was like, no effing way, really? And he's like, yes. So I called my friend. I was like, you don't have to take me down. Bobby can take me down. And I was like, and I said to him, I was like, do you not understand how this is lining up far better than I could have ever imagined? And every time we had to drive to the clinic, the weather was beautiful. The weather, like it either had stormed 2 days before and it cleared up, or it stormed the day after that we were back from the clinic. Like, this is what I mean. These were all synchronicities that were happening. And I was starting to feel the most immense gratitude. And every time I looked in the mirror, I kept saying, like, Oren is home. Oren is home. I started spending so much time visualizing holding him and the twins with him and my older girls with him and how amazing our life was going to be. Like, I was doing a lot of work behind the scenes, but watching these synchronicities happening, I was like, I don't have time for negativity. I'm going with every part of this. And so we did my egg retrieval, and I was borderline hyperstimulated. So they said, you know what, we're going to do a frozen transfer. We're not doing a fresh transfer. I was really, really bummed. And I said, do I still have, like, does the funding still carry forward? And they said, yes, you were literally the last person in our clinic to receive the funding. Everyone else who wanted to have funding now has to wait until January or April, depending on when the funding comes in. And I said, oh my God, thank you. And, lots of tears of gratitude. And I just felt like, I know there's something here. So on Christmas Eve, my girls were with their mom that day, my older girls. Me and Bobby and the twins drove down to our fertility clinic because I had to do blood work. And they said, everything looks beautiful. We're going to start. And they said, January 10th is going to be your implantation date, in and around that date. But based off of how everything's going, and if you ovulate, this is the day. I was like, okay. And, we went to Christmas Eve so, so, so excited. Like, this is working. This is working. And January 10th, we implanted one embryo. So at this point, we had genetic testing. We had lots of frozen embryos from this egg retrieval. But our first embryo transfer, we saw this beautiful little embryo hatching. And I said to Bobby, I said, this is Oren. And he's like, I know. And we had started, I got this little picture frame that said, loved you from first sight. And I put all three of my ultrasounds in that frame. But the thing I did different about this time is I also had a little, like, message board thing that said, yay, it's transfer day. And I put the date. So we got a picture with each, with our embryo that we had just seen on the ultrasound implanted. And I put it in that picture frame. And I also said, it's transfer day, 2000 or January 10th, 2020. And when they called me at work and my fertility nurse said, you're pregnant. And I said, okay. And she's like, your numbers are really strong. Like, you are pregnant. And I was like, yes, 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 it worked. And then they sent me down at 6 weeks. So I had to do only 2 blood draws because the numbers were so high. And so then they sent me down for 6 weeks for an ultrasound. And I got to see my embryo, and he said, your embryo's there. Your embryo's doing well. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And again, this is the middle of winter. So there was many drives that my mom would come down in the morning for me, because sometimes winter driving here in Canada is stressful, and I did not want to have my body stressed out. So Bobby would take the kids to school, and my mom would drive down an hour with me to pick up some meds with me, or just take me to our fertility clinic for blood draws. And I would buy her Starbucks, and we just had really nice conversations. And everything just seemed so beautiful and so, so, so amazing. And I kept visualizing this blonde hair, blue-eyed little boy. And we did a thing called an NIPT test. So at 10 weeks, you do this blood draw. They send it off to California. And even though we did genetic testing, they do further testing to see, if there's Down syndrome and a bunch of other things. And they had recommended that we do it just because. And I thought, sure, why not? But we also got to find out the gender. So at 10 weeks, our doctor put it in an envelope for us, and I gave it to my friend, and she made us cupcakes. And I wanted to do it with my twins, because my older girls got to be at our bigger gender reveal, which was just done for them, but we recorded that one. And we recorded this one as well, but I thought my older girls got to be at a gender reveal, so I wanted my twins to have a little gender reveal. So we each bit into a cupcake, and it was blue. And my husband, like, tears running down his face, he's like, "You're not crying." I'm like, "I told you we were having a boy. I told you Oren was coming home." I did cry later, but it was just like that confirmation how well the universe was working out for me. And we had his name picked out. We were talking about him nonstop. And we even got to have like a 4D ultrasound at 14 weeks when I graduated from my fertility clinic. So here's the thing. March 29th was my last appointment with our fertility clinic before we graduated. And they only granted me one more appointment because the world had just shut down because of the pandemic. And they said, you've made it to 12 weeks, but we need to make sure that everything's still fine. So at my 14-week appointment, I got to see the 4D ultrasound, and I got to see his facial features and all these things. And I was like, holy crap, this is beautiful. This is amazing. I was able to get into my midwives. Yes, things were different because my husband couldn't come to any midwife appointment. And we were told if we did a hospital birth, once he's there, he's there. He can't even go out to the car to grab the car seat, or he doesn't get to come back in. Like, there was some crazy rules going on, and I would have to have a mask during labor and all these crazy things. But I didn't care about any of that. I didn't care that there was a pandemic. I stayed home. We were very cautious, very safe that way. But I was like, I'm pregnant. And I was so, so, so excited. So the moral of this story, I didn't have either pregnancy without struggle. I didn't, but something inside of me just knew. I persisted against all odds. I persisted when someone told me to cancel my cycle. If I would have canceled my cycle, I was the last one to get funding. So if I would have canceled my cycle, people in April that would have been on the list, the fertility clinics were closed. They were only allowed to cycle monitor their patients. They weren't allowed to add on new patients. They weren't allowed to do there was procedures and things that they couldn't do because of COVID. So anyone that was waiting for April to start and waiting for that funding, they had to wait. And this is where I'm trying to say to you, when we needed money, it showed up because I really believed that money is energy. And I really harnessed that belief that the money was going to show up. And I did all the actions. I showed up to all my appointments knowing that the money was going to be there, even when it wasn't actually in my physical bank account. And lo and behold, the day before or even the day of, it showed up. I persisted when I was told to cancel the cycle. I persisted when I was cursing the universe because I didn't understand that I was just talking the talk. I wasn't walking the walk as well. Until I understood that, that's when it all clicked in. And I now have my babies. And you know what? In 2019, when I had this idea for this podcast, my self-image was just so worried about judgment and fears and things like that. And I worked on it. And I finally said to myself, I am ready to help people because people need hope. People need to know that they can persist through hard things. And I am not here to say that my story is, easier or harder than anyone's. There's absolutely no judgment. I am here just to show you, to be the beacon of light, that you can have all the things that you want. And when I started studying thinking into results, that is exactly what I found. I found myself a community where they said, whether it's a baby or to become a millionaire or run a successful business or whatever it is that you want to do, if you do the steps, you walk the walk, you talk the talk, you will have it. And I harnessed a belief that I will have this no matter what. And I did. I really did. And that's why I want this podcast to share with all of you The same things that I walked the walk and talked the talk and I got my babies, because I want each and every single one of you to have the things that you want in life. And if it's a baby, I want to show you how. I really want to show you how, because I believe that every single person deserves to have the life that they want, no matter their upbringing, no matter their environment, no matter anything. Every single person deserves to have the things that they want to have. And in my case, it was a family, it was babies, and I got to have them. So thank you, everyone, for being here with me today, listening to me cry through the whole episode. But more than anything, I really hope that you got hope from this and you heard the synchronicities and you heard how I gave up for a while, but something inside of me said, you can't. And I didn't. So I bid you adieu. And I say thank you, thank you, thank you for being here with me today. I really do hope you got so much from today's lesson. And stay tuned for next week's episode, where you're actually going to hear from my first mentor, Danielle. And we just talk about my journey that way, and from a mentor point of view, what she saw me go through and what she did and things like that, and where she talks a little bit about the universal laws and things like that. So I cannot wait for you guys to hear next week's episode as well. And again, thank you so much for being here. And I seriously am sending so much love and light and holding space for each and every single one of you on your fertility journey. With love and gratitude, sending love and light. Have an amazing day.
If you found this helpful or know anyone that needs to hear this, please share, and don't forget to leave a review and subscribe. In love and gratitude, Jessica.